Well, November has been a very, very busy month as far as South Africa is concerned. Moody's gave us a big fat warning that we've got 3 months to sort out our stuff. Otherwise, by the time the budget comes around in February, they may be a little less kind to us than they have been for the last 2 years by maintaining our credit rating. The Reserve Bank really worried about a ratings downgrade, kept interest rates flat. But we did start seeing the earliest of signs of consumer confidence beginning, or business confidence beginning to pick up. It's the first time in about 2 years that business confidence showed just one blip of positivity. Also, lots of corporate news, lots of South African companies in all kinds of trouble. So lots to talk about with Owen Nkomo at Inkunzi Investments and Paul Theron, the Managing Director of Vestact, who are here to help us navigate all of the big issues that have been playing up as we go into the final stretches of 2019. I can't believe the year's already over, Paul Theron. Have you made money this year?
We've made money in our New York portfolios. Locally, we've sort of edged slightly higher. But remember, this year was always going to look good because we had a big slump in 2018 in the tail end of the year, which eventually turned in Boxing Day. So we came into the year bouncing off a low base. But yeah, I am positive about 2020. I like the sound of 2020, you know? 2020 vision.
It's that perfect vision, yes.
Exactly. It's got a kind of resilient, sort of sounding, fresh, modern kind of feel to it. So let's see if we can carry that through into the new year.
Owen, have you made money this year?
Oh, in 2018, in December, I said I like the sound of 2019. But 2019 has been more of the same drama. But it's been a good year. We've had our portfolios weighted offshore. So we have done okay, but some of the portfolios haven't done so well, especially the local ones.
I mean, the Dow's over 28,000, the S&P has been at record levels, the Nasdaq at record levels. This has been a remarkable year for the US economy,
it has been.
Which gets the pundits really, really nervous, because at some point the visage of the longest bull market in history has got to crack. It's got to crack, Paul Theron.
Well, we've discussed this many times.
It's getting closer.
Even
every
in this
time
chair.
we discuss it.
That's what you said last time, Bruce.
It gets closer every year.
No, you know, I think we're heading into an era where inflation is very subdued, interest rates are low. The corporates that are succeeding are going to succeed even more. So the big global multinationals are well positioned. Obviously, there are issues in politics. There's a 2020 US presidential election coming up. There's some unresolved business in Europe with the Brexit scenario, China and the US trade war. But all things being equal, I think you've got to remain invested in the global leading stocks. And that's the lesson people, I think, need to learn, is that over time markets do go up, and it's foolish to be ultra defensive, because you know all you do then is you're out of where the action is.
I mean, so if you've really got to do yourself a favor and just go onto onto Google and Google US stock market 10-year graph, and somebody will give you a free graph that shows what happens
or
in
even
10
a 100-year graph,
a 20-year graph, a 50-year graph, a 100-year graph, and suddenly the Great Depression of 1929 is nothing. The 2008 fallout is nothing in the fullness of time.
That's the issue. So it feels terrible when you're down 30 or 40% in middle of one of those big generational crises. But the secret is to keep calm and carry on.
Stay invested for the long term, certainly.
I mean, the fact is that we're beginning to address the multiple years of malfeasance and corruption. Is there too much damage that has been done to the core of South Africa to consider investing in some of its better companies now?
Look, the macro context, as I said, is not favorable, and I think that's because the ANC's base is not really interested in radical intervention, job reduction, privatization, all of that sort of stuff. That much is obvious. That's the landscape upon which our local corporates have to operate. So if the state finances are poor and we get a big sovereign downgrade and the rand is very weak, that's difficult for our local companies. It's difficult for them even if they have offshore operations. So that would be my cause for concern. My general view is that if you own SA equities already, hold on to them, but I wouldn't be aggressively adding to those portfolios except in a couple of key cases like, you know, Naspers process and so on.
We must talk about the biggest disappointment of 2019, which was the Naspers process affair. Are you slightly optimistic that 2020 in South Africa, Owen, can be better than 2019, or you're not yet convinced?
Look, I mean, I think a lot of work still has to be done. One thing that that you know about us people doing business in the country is we're very patriotic. But we're faced with all these challenges, and between the three of us here and other people sitting, in these big offices in Sandton, we think there's obvious solutions to these problems. We think people understand that, stagnant GDP growth or declining GDP growth, very high unemployment is a big deal, and we think we need to be pulling the big levers in the economy to make sure we turn the tide around. But we don't get the sense that there's the right sort of urgency to fix the economy or to deal with some of these issues around corruption in state-owned enterprises. In the general economy, as it were, in corporate South Africa, there's just so much, bad behavior by leadership in these companies. And I think the other S you were looking for is Stefanuti stocks.
There's another one. No, exactly. Getting itself caught up in Eskom.
So, I mean, we're sitting here in an environment where it's very difficult to make decisions in the short term. But I think some things are going okay in the country. We still have an independent reserve bank. We still have properly managed markets. The banking system is still intact. And I think we can actually, if we make a few strong decisions, we can convince the ratings agencies and the foreign investors that, they need to give us yet another chance to fix things. But I think 2020, I thought, was going to be the year of big decisions. And I believe that the midterm budget statement could have been a different statement to convince the world that we want to make those big, difficult decisions. But I don't think we've achieved that.
Such negative Nancy's here on Taking Stock. There really are. But we'll be picking up on some of the big disasters of 2019, some of the big successes of 2019. And there have been a couple as the early signs of a South African turnaround. The painful, agonizing, time-consuming, fractious turnaround of South Africa hopefully gathers pace as we move into the new year. We're talking to Owen Nkomo and Theron this evening on Taking Stock.